gonna
There we go.
I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce my good friend and Dharma brother, Steve Given. And he's going to be talking to us today about two Buddhas. And I'm really looking forward to this talk. So there you go.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to see everyone. Good afternoon. Good Oscar evening, afternoon. I am from Hollywood, so this is an important day in my calendar. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your practice. I would like to talk a bit this afternoon about how we explore Dharma. How do we learn about Zen, understand Dharma, and deepen our practice? The basics are clear. We get up each day, sit zazen, quieting our mind, and sitting with ourselves. Each day, the importance of our practice is manifested in our lives. After the basics, after we've begun practicing, what's next? I think it's important to deepen our understanding of Dharma and become part of a spiritual community, Sangha. The three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, are like a stool. Without three legs, our stool is incomplete and unstable. The next question is, of course, how do we continue to learn? I have a fondness for books. I fear more of an out-of-control bibliophilia. This does not in and of itself mean I have a deep understanding of Dharma. What is needed is a teacher. I'm grateful for my teacher, Endo Kirk Phillips. Our relationship, teacher to student, supports my growth as a Buddhist priest. I'm grateful for his teaching. I'm very grateful he is feeling better. Our understanding of practice depends most directly on mind-to-mind transmission between a teacher and a student, between a Buddha and a Buddha. This idea of mind-to-mind transmission is descended from Shakyamuni Buddha himself, as described by Eihei Dogen in Menju, Face-to-Face Transmission, the 57th fascicle of the Shubogenzo. Quote, once on Vulture Peak in India, in the midst of a vast assembly of beings, Shakyamuni Buddha held up an Udambara blossom and blinked. Mahakashapa smiled. Then Shakyamuni Buddha said, I have the treasury of the true Dharma I, the wondrous heart of nirvana. I entrust it to Mahakashapa. End quote. This is central to our practice. We do not receive the gift of Dharma from reading sutras or analyzing historical texts, as much as I love to do both. We receive the gift of Dharma from a teacher, someone who can share the Dharma with us and test our understanding. Dogen goes on to say, quote, this is the meaning of transmitting the treasury of the true Dharma I, face to face, from Buddha to Buddha, from ancestor to ancestor. It was authentically transmitted through the 7 original Buddhas to Mahakashapa. From Mahakashapa, there were 28 transmissions up to and including Bodhidharma. Venerable Bodhidharma himself went to China and gave face-to-face transmission to Hui Ke, Great Master Zhenzong Pujie. There were 5 transmissions to Huineng, Great Master Da Jian of Mount Cao Chi. Then there were 17 transmissions through Rujing, my lay master, old Buddha Tian Tong of the renowned Mount Taibai, Qinyuan Prefecture, great song, end quote. This idea of transmission is critical here. When we receive the precepts through Jukai or Shuketokudo, priest ordination, we receive a blood vein. This document records the transmission of Dharma from heart to heart, from warm hand to warm hand, beginning with Shakyamuni Buddha to the person receiving the blood vein. This is the thread of teaching intimately from person to person. The Chinese have a phrase that describes this idea of transmission outside of words, bu li wen zi, in Japanese, furyu monja. The phrase literally means not establishing words and letters. Zen's unique sense of a school of Buddhism that does not rely on scriptural teaching, but has a direct connection through the Buddhas and patriarchs, Fozu, to the mind of Buddha himself. My own history here is somewhat checkered. I began sitting in 1980, reading copiously about Zen and other aspects of Buddhism. This practice led me to a place where I was full of ideas rather than developing a deeper understanding of the three treasures. As noted by the scholar Arthur Koestler, quote, "Indeed, to drag in religion and engage in argument on metaphysics is regarded in Zen circles as an abhorrent thing, which the old masters called to stink of Zen," end quote. It was not till 1989 when I first began working with a teacher, deepening my understanding and enriching my practice. My path became clear. Reading about Zen while expanding my knowledge did not translate to a deeper understanding of Dharma. Sitting in isolation, while useful to develop a meditation practice, did not ultimately translate to a deeper understanding of Buddha nature. I was left sitting with my delusions, grasping at dust motes. Through working with a teacher, both my practice and my grasp of the Dharma began to grow and mature. It was as if my teacher watered my understanding, turning a withered sapling into a stalwart tree. Perhaps the oak tree in the courtyard of the 37th case of the Mumonkan, the Gateless Gate. Quote, "A monk asked Joshu, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the west?" Joshu said, "The oak tree in the courtyard," end quote. This idea of mind-to-mind transmission, heart to heart, or heart-mind to heart-mind, is in Chinese xin dui, xin, sometimes simply xin, xin, heart, heart. This relationship describes a level of spiritual intimacy, sharing Dharma between teacher and student. Another concept that is helpful here is guanxi, a relationship. The concept of guanxi suggests a variety of relationships, including a teacher-student relationship. I have guanxi with my teacher, a special relationship. When the Buddha raised the Udambara blossom, Mahakashapa smiled, message sent and received, a deep understanding shared without words, without the baggage that language imposes on communication. At that moment, Mahakashapa became the recipient of Fofa, Buddha Dharma. Mahakashapa received Dharma transmission from Shakyamuni Buddha. Each of us who has worked with a teacher has guanxi with our teacher. We share knowledge and, more importantly, share the Dharma intimately, heart to heart, warm hand to warm hand. Perhaps one of the most important ideas in the practice of Buddhism is the concept of only a Buddha and a Buddha. In the Lotus Sutra, this is expressed as two Buddhas sitting side by side, described in chapter 12. As noted in their book, Two Buddhas Seated Side by Side, Donald Lopez and Jacqueline Stone write about this from the perspective of the Lotus Sutra. Quote, "The phrase two Buddhas seated side by side, Japanese, Nibutsu Byoza, the title of our book, occurs in medieval Japanese writing and refers to a defining moment in the Lotus Sutra when Prabhutaratna, a Buddha of the ancient past, suddenly appears at the Lotus assembly, vibrant and alive within his stupa. to bear witness to the stupa's truth. The sutra's truth. He then invites the Buddha of the present, Shakyamuni, to enter the stupa and share his seat. The scene of the two Buddhas seated together overturns two conventional ideas. The first is that only one Buddha can appear in the world at the time. The second is that once a Buddha has passed into nirvana and his relics have been entombed in a stupa, he is inaccessible. End quote. A stupa is a structure housing the relics of the Buddha after the Buddha's parinirvana, his passing. I would like to share part of the Lotus Sutra where this event is described. The translation I'm using is from Kubo and Yuyama. I edited the text to fit the time we have together today. Quote, "Then Shakyamuni Buddha again transformed and purified 200 myriads of kotis of nayutas of land in each of the 8 directions so the Buddhas could come and sit," end quote. A little translation is in order. A kotis is a very large number, 10 million or 100 million. A nayutas is 100 billion. This represents a number that is unimaginably large, equaling to 10 quintillion, or 1 followed by 19 zeros. The sutra is describing something too numerous, too vast to count or even understand. Back to the Lotus Sutra. Quote, "Then the magically created forms of Shakyamuni Buddha, which had been teaching the Dharma in the hundreds of thousands of myriads of kotis of nayutas of lands in the east, equal to in number to the sands of the Ganges, gathered here. In this way, all the Buddhas in the 10 directions gradually came until all were assembled, sitting in the 8 directions. At that time, these Buddha Tathagatas filled 400 myriad of kotis of nayutas of lands in each direction. Then sitting on the lion seats under the jeweled trees, the Buddhas each dispatched their attendants with hands full of jeweled flowers to inquire after the Buddha Shakyamuni, saying, 'O son of a virtuous family, you should approach the Buddha Shakyamuni on Mount Girdrakatu and give him the greeting saying, are you without illness and pain? And are you full of vigor and at ease? And are the assemblies of bodhisattvas and shravakas all at ease or not?'" End quote. 2 more definitions. A shravaka is one who hears the Buddha's voice. Girdvakuta is Vulture Peak, where Buddha Shakyamuni held up the Udambara flower and Mahakashapa smiled. Back to the sutra. Quote, "Then, having paid homage to the Buddha by scattering him with these jeweled flowers, say this to him. The Buddha so-and-so wishes you to open this jeweled stupa," end quote. All the other Buddhas dispatched their messengers like this. Thereupon Shakyamuni Buddha opened the entrance to the 7 jeweled stupa with his right finger. There was a tremendous sound, as if the bar and lock of a gateway of a large city were being pushed aside. Then immediately the entire gathering saw the Tathagata Prabhutaratna in the jeweled stupa, sitting on a lion seat as if he were in meditation, his body whole and undecomposed. They heard him say, "Splendid, splendid. The Buddha Shakyamuni is teaching the Lotus Sutra, and I have come in order to hear it." At that time, the fourfold assembly saw the Buddha who entered parinirvana immeasurable thousands of myriads of kotis of kalpas ago, speaking these words. They praised this unprecedented experience and scattered heavenly jeweled flowers upon the Buddhas Prabhutaratna and Shakyamuni, end quote. 1 more definition. One of my favorite definitions from a sutra, thousands of myriads of kotis of kalpas, is an unimaginably long period of time, longer than the time required to wear away a cube of rock 40 ri, about 450 meters on each side, by brushing it with a piece of cloth once every 100 years. Back to the sutra. Quote, then from within the stupa, the Buddha Prabhutaratna offered half of his seat to the Buddha Shakyamuni, saying, "O Shakyamuni Buddha, please take a seat here," end quote. Then the Buddha Shakyamuni immediately entered the stupa and sat cross-legged on half the seat. Thereupon the great assembly saw two Tathagatas sitting cross-legged on the lion seat in the seven-jeweled stupa, end quote. I think there are several ways this parable teaches us. First, as noted by Lopez and Stone, the Lotus Sutra is telling us that two Buddhas can sit side by side. Prior to this, it was believed that only one Buddha could be incarnated at one time in the Saha world, the world you and I share here and now. More importantly for us, it is a parable of a Buddha and a Buddha, side by side. We are all Buddhas and can sit side by side, or at least side by side over Zoom, sharing Dharma, practicing together. This is reenacted each time during a practice period when the Shuso, head student, sits next to the preceptor. This is Sangha, Buddha to Buddha transmission. While we may find Buddhist literature include sutras and shastras, commentaries, useful, it is sharing Dharma between teacher and student, between two Buddhas, that is critical. Dogen wants us to understand this intimate transmission of Dharma is not simply teaching in the modern sense. There's something more going on here. Again, from the Shobogenzo. Quote, Shakyamuni Buddha, by seeing Mahakashyapa, intimately entrusted him with the Dharma. Ananda, Buddha's disciple and a cousin, or Rahula, the son of Shakyamuni, and Yasodhara, were not equal to Mahakashyapa, who received this intimate entrustment. Nor were all the great bodhisattvas who were unable to sit in Mahakashyapa's seat. The world-honored one and Mahakashyapa sat together on the same seat and wore the same robe, end quote. Dogen considers the Lotus Sutra in Hokke Ten Hokke, Dharma blossoms turn Dharma blossoms. In this fascicle, Dogen states, quote, the Dharma is always one Buddha vehicle. Only Buddhas can help Buddhas to fully experience this reality. All Buddhas, including the 7 original Buddhas, help each other to fully experience this reality and make it possible for Shakyamuni Buddha to attain the way. This occurs in the Buddha lands in the 10 directions encompassing India and China. This is the Dharma that reaches Huineng, the 33rd ancestor, Zen master Dajian. It is the one vehicle Dharma of Buddhas alone fully experiencing reality. This alone is the one essential matter, the one Buddha vehicle, end quote. Shunryu Suzuki Roshi translated the Sandokai in Chinese Zan Tong Qi, a sutra by the 8th century Chinese ancestor Shoto Shichuan, in Japanese Sekito Kisen. A translation of this text is found in Branching Streams Flow in the Darkness, a collection of Suzuki Roshi's talks on the Sandokai, edited by Sojin Mel Weitzman and Daru Michael Winger. Translated as Harmony of Difference and Equality, part of this text states, the mind of the great sage of India is intimately transmitted from west to east. Regarding is intimately transmitted, Suzuki Roshi states, quote, Mitsuni literally means exactly, without a gap between the two. The main purpose of the Sandokai is to explain reality from two sides. As I said, San means many, Do means one. What is many? What is one? Many are one, One is many. Even though you say many, the many things do not exist separately from each other. They are closely related. If so, they are one. But even though they are one, the one appears to be many. So many is right, and one is right. Even though we say one, we cannot ignore the various beings like stars and moons, animals and fish. When we discuss the meaning of each being, we have many things to discuss. When we conclude that reality is in fact just oneness, the whole discussion will take place in this understanding of the unity of one and many. Suzuki Roshi goes on to say, Dogen Zenji said, even the sound of a bell and the color of a mountain are bodhisattvas. They all can teach. Actually, he means that all that we see teaches the Lotus Sutra. That is how Zen Buddhists understand the sutra. When we understand everything, everything will be important, end quote. When we collaborate with a teacher, it can manifest in several ways. In the most obvious way, we meet with the teacher, ask questions, receive teaching, exchange views, and most importantly, learn from each other. Perhaps the most wonderful thing I have learned from over 30 years of teaching graduate students is that when a teacher and a student meet face to face, both learn. I learn from my students hopefully learn from me. When I am working with a sewing student who is sewing his, her, their rakusu or okesa, I'm sharing what I know about sewing Buddha's robe. The student is sharing their process, their feelings, their concerns, sometimes their life. We both learn, we both share. In his text, Mindfulness and Intimacy, Ben Connolly relates this experience as a sewing student of Tomoe Katagiri. Tomoe Katagiri taught me well, mostly by staying by my side and quietly pouring her energy into whatever we were doing together. Tomoe-san helped to bring the art of sewing Zen Buddhist robes from Japan to the United States, and she was my teacher in sewing the robes that symbolize my ordination. She gave me precise instructions on the technical aspects of sewing, with which I am far from adept. But to me, her real teaching lay in her embodiment of patience, sitting, attention to the present moment, and quiet, warm intimacy. It was not uncommon as we worked side by side for us to be silent for an hour at a time to support wholeheartedly focusing on each stitch. I don't think she was conscious of teaching, but she brought me right back to what was in front of me. Over time, end quote, excuse me. Over time, I learned that moment to moment, everyone is my teacher. It is my task to be open to what is being taught, wherever I am, the Dharma that is in front of me in any situation, in each moment. I am both student and teacher. As to who should be your student, your teacher, that depends. No teacher is perfect for everyone. All teachers offer Dharma. In the end, who should be your teacher depends on your relationship and your trust in that person. Again, from Ben Connolly. Trust is the key to the teacher-student relationship, and the best trust is based on the teacher's presence and connection, rather than knowledge, power, or magnetism. Trust is the key because the teacher and student relationship is one of our most fertile grounds for cultivating our capacity for intimacy. Trust opens the door for intimacy, which is the path to trust. As I reach the end of this talk, I would like to express my deep gratitude again for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I am grateful to each member of our community for sharing Dharma as well as asking about it. I learn each day. Hopefully, on some of those days, I'll be able to teach as well. I'd like to end with a poem by a Chinese nun, Ben Ming, originally bright, who lived a millennium ago in the Yuan dynasty in China. Quote, "Don't you know that afflictions are nothing more than wisdom, and that the purest of blossoms emerge from the mire? If someone were to come and ask me, what do I do? After eating my gruel and rice, I wash my bowl. Don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about a thing." You may play all day like a silly child in the sand by the sea, but you must always realize the truth of your original face. When you suffer the blows delivered by the patriarch's staff, if you can't say anything, you will perish by the staff. If you can say something, you will perish by the staff. In the end, what will you do if you are forbidden to travel by night but must arrive by dawn? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to sit for a few minutes, and one of these guys is going to ring a bell. Who's it going to be? Steve. Okay, great. Thank you.